Hey, everybody, we are back. I always start with a bang there, Megan. This is another How to Succeed podcast, and it's brought to you by Sandler Training, the worldwide leader in sales, management, and customer service training. There's over 200 locations. If you need one of those, go to Sandler.com. If you have more than one location, go to Sandler.com as well, but check out our enterprise sales training team. My guest this week is Megan Miller. She's an intentional living expert, and we're going to talk about intentional selling. How do you be mindful, be proactive, keep your stuff together while all things are going crazy in the world of sales and the sales profession? So stay tuned. Good stuff. We're going to talk about how to succeed at intentional selling. Megan, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about intention and what that means for you off the bat here.
I'm so happy to be here with you today, my friend. You do start with a bang. I love that. So intentional. God, it's such a buzzword today, isn't it? We love a good buzzword. But to me, and what it has meant in my journey is we feel that we need to respond to the team's text. We need to send that customer request. We need to be checking our email on the way to the grocery store. We need to be responding right away. And we become so retroactive, and our days then become everybody else's wants and needs and requests of our times, and builds these Darth Vader moments where you're just going through the motion and you're on edge. And the one question, when the one client doesn't convert, when someone pushes back, man, you just go on edge. So I say all that to say intentionality is when you hit the pause, when you thoughtfully take a moment. You don't need to be responding right away. You thoughtfully take a moment to articulate a response, to think, does everybody need to be on this call? To ask yourself, what do I want from this? What is my objective? What does success look like to me? That to me is intentionality.
I love this, and I love that it's very Sandler kind of thing. I know you have a cursory understanding of Sandler, but for me, David Sandler believed that sales professionals had rights, that they should have equal business stature in the meeting. They should be able to choose who they spend their time with, right? And not have to just jump when a customer says jump and respond to every single request. They should be able to pick and choose and qualify the buyers just as much as the buyers are qualifying the sellers. And that's what I heard in your opening remarks there a little bit, is that sometimes we need to take a pause, slow down, and be like, wait, am I doing the right thing right now? Am I talking to the right person? Should there be 87 people CC'd on this email? Like, let's do what actually moves the sales forward, or what's in the best interest of both the buyer and seller. So let's start with attitude here a little bit. And the comments are open. We're doing these live so that if you have a comment, you can chime in on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. Ask a question of Megan and we'll respond to it. But my first question for you is, what are the common misconceptions that you see in sales? Why do you think salespeople burn out? They get frustrated. I think they get distracted a lot and kind of frantic in their sales behaviors. Why do you think that is?
I love that we're live. I kind of feel like this is Saturday Night Live. So Mike, to answer your question on the burnout, and I'm talking from someone who lived in sales for 15 years. So I look back on my journey, Mike, and I wrote this down this morning because I knew we were going to spend time together, and I thought it was so relevant. Universally, as sales folks, there's this beautiful DNA that we have. That's this competition meets empathy meets, we want to get the deal. We want to close the deal. It's like our sweet sauce, right? And I look back and I was so territorial. And if I was not getting the A player, if I was not getting the shout out from the VP of sales to say, Megan did it again, if I wasn't closing that deal, if someone else did it, I was pissed off. I was angry. And I think there is so much power in community over competition. And us salespeople sometimes think we need to guard what we're doing. It's our client, it's our thing, and we don't leverage anyone else. And there is so much power in community over competition. I guarantee what you are struggling to close, or the thoughts that you're having in here, mindset, that's another thing. That's a huge thing that I never worked on, was my own mindset. I'd get up, I'd flip over, turn over, I'd grab the phone, I'd start checking the emails. You do that for 3 minutes, Mike, and you have a 70% higher chance of having a bad day right in the morning. Again, back to
Wow.
intentionality. But I don't think a couple things. We don't leverage the people around us enough to help support us. Work smarter, not harder. You have a community of people here that want to support you if you ask and clearly ask. One. Two, we don't work on our mindset because we are so busy as exhaustion as a badge of honor.
Mm. Hustle culture is big in sales for sure, right? You gotta make more calls, gotta see more people, gotta get more done than everybody else. And Sandler even said 50 years ago, like that's a bad idea. You
Yeah.
know, if you're just out there trying to make it rain proposals, you're going to be doing a lot of stupid stuff for people that will never buy from you. And so you gotta plan your day and work with intentionality. I think that's huge.
And I love how you said, and don't we do this? So there's two types of stress that you have in life. There is your overwhelm that comes with life circumstances, right? Humans going through the journey, man, there will be things that come on our plate, whether it be with our family, with our kids, just life, right? You'll have that. But then there's this own sort of overwhelm that we create ourselves. I look back on my own journey, and it's so easy to point the finger at the job, at the customers, at customer service. God bless customer service. They always get the wrath, don't they? It's so easy to point the finger at everyone else, but the common denominator in it all is you. And when everything's important, then nothing's important. When you're frantically thinking, I should be doing more because everybody else is doing more, look at my gap to my number, and you're pinging out emails to your point, sending out proposals, throwing spaghetti against a wall, and you're just burning yourself out. And you carry this stress backpack on that you become immune to that you don't even realize. That's overwhelm that you created and that you have the power to change it.
Love that. Now let's talk about the ideal situation. We stressed everybody out. They know they're stressed out. You know, this is a rough year. We've had a lot of volatility for the last 3 years. How do we actually sell with intention? What does a sane, healthy, well-minded salesperson look, feel, sound like?
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day in sales world. And we were talking about how technology has become such a gift in our world, but yet it has also become the thing that we just focus on and we lose the sight of this human connection. Right? We
Mhm.
think we're robots and we're so quick to send the text, we're so quick to send the email. I think there's so much power. Like I'm hashtag back to basics. It has stuck around for all these years for a reason. So I think in sales we need to go back to the basics, get away from the whiff on what's in it for me as the sales individual and begin to really ask. Pick up the phone, have a conversation. Don't go right into your spiel of questions. Get to know, how are you really? Like, there is so much power in building a rapport before you go right for the ask. And I think we need to get back to that.
You know, when I think about behavior, this is doing the right thing at the right time, our goals, plans, and action. So I wanted to ask you, you specifically said starting the day, but we could talk about starting a
Mm.
sales call or starting our week or month or quarter or two. What do you think are the ideal action items here? What would a good intentional day look like to you?
Yeah. So I am a huge believer, and thank you, Mike, for this question because I this is so powerful. So for me, a couple things. One, I am a huge advocate in my mindset because I was so busy getting up and responding to the emails before I was even out of bed. So busy hitting respond to everything that I never even paused and intentionally took a moment to ask what I wanted. And I found that when I did these two things, it changed how I showed up. These are non-negotiables, and this is my mindset first, and then I will get into the planning of your day. So, first mindset, I make a commitment to myself before the rest of the world gets a hold of me. You can do this for 5 minutes as you're grabbing your coffee in the morning, before you boot up your computer. Just a couple minutes, even in the shower. Ask yourself these two questions. One, what is one small act of service I can do? whether that be leaving a little note for your partner, whether that be texting a friend, whether that be dropping a note to the colleague to say, hey, when we were on that call yesterday, like you killed it, less than a minute. It is so powerful in how you show up. And 9 times out of 10, that individual will respond to you and say, you have no idea how bad I needed that. Kindness. The second thing is, what is one thing I can do for me? For me personally, not Megan Miller in sales, but personally, what do I need? Because in sales, it can become our sole purpose. And we don't even realize it, that we're so quick to closing the deal that all these other drawers of our life become empty. And no job can hit all of these drawers that you need in your life as a human. So what's one small thing I can do? Whether that's going for a walk, whether that is taking 10 minutes to YouTube how to do the blog post that I always wanted to do, whether that is taking the salsa dancing class you keep saying that you want to take at 4:30, whatever that is, one commitment. That's mindset. And then the second thing, Mike, back to your question on starting your day and doing so intentionality, is we have all of these lists of to dos and they can live in here. If you're like me, hashtag type A, I will even print that out of my to dos today, all that I need. And like I said earlier, when everything's important, nothing is important. So doing a brain dump of everything that you have to do for the day and pick 3 things. 3 things should be revenue driven, but 3 things that will carry you forward to hit your overall goals. Just pick 3 things. Do those right away in the morning and you'll feel like a rock star.
I really like that advice. I think journaling in the morning before you touch any devices or look at anything. Love writing down the priorities, everything you got to do, and then sort those by order of priorities. What can wait till tomorrow? What needs to be done today? What's going to make the biggest impact for you, your career, your company? I wanted to zoom out a little bit though, because you mentioned a sales career, and I think this
Yeah.
is important that we're so focused on this pay period, this month's quota, this quarter, this year, that I think sometimes we forget about building a healthy sales
Mm.
career. And you mentioned you did this for 15 years, and I know that you consult with other people about kind of designing a life around this. Can you talk a little bit about what a healthy sales profession looks like, or a healthy job long term?
So, Mike, I want to go back to something real quick, and then we'll get into the
Yeah.
long term career because that's so powerful. Your reputation is your business card. We've heard that for years, and I feel that these things stick around for a reason. But so when I was talking earlier about asking myself these 2 questions, I know it sounds hokey, and I know you're like, yeah, yeah. But here's what I want to tell you as someone who's done it and lived it. When I did those things for me and when I kept the small commitment for me, 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever that looked like, when I read the email, it didn't set me over the edge. When the customer came back with a problem, I didn't flip out. When I was down to my goals, I didn't start scrambling. In sales, especially when you're a high performer, everything can feel personal and everything can feel like an attack. And that's when you start scrambling. And that's when there's the 87,000 CCs emails instead of intentionally pausing to really look at the big picture. So I want to give that a highlight because I think it's so important. And then to your question on healthy sales profession, now that I have started my own business, it is so interesting, Mike. These relationships that I had in 15 years that I did not realize would come around full circle to help me now as I build this business of intentional living. So I say that to say people remember not what you say, but how you make them feel. It's true. We've heard that from time and time again. So it is so quick as a salesperson when we are frantically trying to hit our numbers or our KPIs, right? Or all around metrics that we lose sight of the human piece. So I would say if a deal doesn't go your way, make sure that you continue to just ping the client and follow up and leave some messages. Follow up is key. Did you know? Now, I might jack up the stats, Mike, because it's been a moment. But I want to say like 90% of your sales competitors, they won't follow up more than twice or something like that, and now you have
Yeah,
to
one
reach
and a
out.
half tries is the average. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And 3
and
times is, yeah, putting you in the top 10% for sure.
Mike, what is it to get the conversion now? Is it like 8 times you have to touch the customer or something?
Yeah, 7 or 8 touches, those continue to go up, for sure. But
Yeah.
last I heard officially was like 7.
So I would say how I was successful in sales and how I see those relationships now, 15 years later, sometimes it takes a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years till you see the fruit of your efforts. So I would say don't get discouraged when you don't get the sale right away in the month that you immediately need it. Be strategic and leverage your CRM. I used to always say that was my Bible. And work smarter, not harder. So set up the future traces to continue to touch point the client. My biggest deal that I closed, Mike, it took me 2 years. And I remember everyone saying, let it go, Meg, let it go. And I just knew in my gut. That's the other thing. Your intuition, man, listen to that. But I continued to touch point the customer, not always with an ask, but just a, hey, I was just thinking of you, wanted to touch in. That's so powerful.
I love that. And you mentioned 2 things that David Sandler himself said. One is the work smarter, not harder. The second one, though, I think is a little more counterintuitive, that people don't see this, that the day you're having a bad day and you sent the email or you didn't get a response, or you called and got the voicemail and nothing seemed to go right, you don't see when that person does open the email, forwarded that to somebody else, and that comes back around to you 90 days later, and you have a good day because you made a sale. You don't tie those 2 things together because there was a lot of invisible strings doing that in the background. So, David Sandler answer was, well, I might as well be happy every day because we're putting in the work, we're earning compound interest, we're building those relationships that pay off years later. It's impossible for us to see all of those 6 degrees of connections that happen around us. We shouldn't get frustrated when we have a bad day, and we shouldn't get too excited when we have a good day, because that day was predicated on all of those other days. So depending on your sales cycle, 6, 9 months, over a year, work that you did previous is paying off now. Those are really the days that you should have been happy. So I
Mm,
love what you said there. Now, we've mentioned a lot of techniques already, and you've gotten pretty technical with it, but I wanted to specifically ask you about intentionality.
yeah.
Do you think about that as mindfulness and practicing meditation, or is it really, are there any like tips or tricks that people could do to say, I want to do this? I'm with Meg. How do I start?
I love that question on where to start because I say this all the time. In this beautiful world where we have any answer that we need, especially now with Chat GPT, that you can figure out the answer to just about anything you want with a little thing called your phone and Google. And if you're like me, you can take it into your you take it into your bathroom and you can figure out any answer to anything by the time you're done in the restroom, but we don't move into action. That's our biggest barrier because of the conversations we have in here. So, to the person that knows they want to be more intentional, that is like, yes, Meg, I'm right here with you and Mike, and I feel like I'm running myself ragged, and that's the hardest conversation because we're never taught how to have it. I would ask you to do just this one thing. This one thing. When you get up tomorrow morning, don't go right to your phone and start scrolling the emails and start looking on the social feeds and start watching the news. I want you to take a moment. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn out process. I want you to take just a moment, and I want you to ask yourself, because the power of your questions is so powerful to what your life looks like, on these 2 things. Just what is one thing I can do today that'll make me happy? It's one act of service. And then I would say, if you're feeling overwhelmed with all of the to dos, write out everything you got. Like we said earlier, Mike, write out everything you got with the brain dump and pick 3 big things. It's so powerful. I know it sounds so simple, but it's the simplest things that we know we should do, but we don't do because as humans, I don't know what it is about us. I wish I could figure it out, but we think it needs to be so difficult and so hard, and we need to be exhausted and we need to be struggling. And if it's not, then we're not doing it right. Sometimes these simple, small acts have the biggest power in how you show up, which changes everything.
So great. And I think you can repeat that as much as needed, right? If you're stressed out and you lost it all by lunch, take a moment for yourself, refocus, bring that back to intention. Great advice there. Now, I wanted to get to know you a little bit better. We're talking with Megan Miller. You can find her at megan-miller.com, intentional living expert, and she spent a long time in sales. So she loves working with salespeople here. Check her out at megan-miller.com. Megan, at this point in your career, how do you define success?
Mike, I love this question. I about just had like a church service moment where I about jumped out of my seat. I love this question. So, we were talking earlier about Dr. Ben Hardy being at the Sandler Summit. I love that you guys brought him in. Please read his books or listen to him on audio. Or, Mike, you were telling me about his YouTube channel. I love him. He had written a book. This is how I first got acclimated with him, co authored The Gap and the Gain. Oh, it's such a great book for especially us high performing go getters where you are constantly thinking of the next tier, right? Like you're sprinting up this ladder of closing the deals, hitting the numbers, getting the promotion, yada, yada, yada. And you're always living in gap mode to the next thing. I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when. And what Dr. Ben Hardy unpacks in this book, The Gap and the Gain, which was so powerful for me, is this little exercise about what does success look like for you. So my whole life, unintentionally, it was about comparing myself to everyone else. Where was I as a salesperson on the list? Was I getting number one? Because if I wasn't, then I was angry and I was working harder. When I started this movement in my own business, when I closed a deal, I was like, great, next deal, great, next deal. And I caught myself getting on this ladder. And Mike, this exercise in the book that was so powerful was really taking a moment of silence, again, back to the silence, pen to paper of asking yourself these specific questions on what success looks like to you. And when I did that, Mike, with a couple moments of silence in the morning before I let the rest of the world in, I realized that I was so much more successful than I gave myself credit for because it wasn't about the clients converted. It wasn't about the revenue. Yes, all of those things are great. But what it was about for me that I didn't even take the time to think about was having dinner with my husband at night and truly being present. It was being able to work from anywhere at any time and do it with passion. It was getting a message from someone that said that, my content really motivated them and they needed it. It was those sorts of things that I was so busy focused on the numbers and the things that I did not even realize that I was so much more successful than I gave myself credit for.
Great answer. Now I'm going to ask you the opposite question. Was there a failure you're most proud of in your sales career, or a particularly hard lesson learned that you'd like to share with everybody?
Oh my God. The lessons they keep coming. I tell you what, I have had many Darth Vader moments. And I look back and they're very cringeworthy. However, I can tell you now, like this just happened to me last week. Here's one really relevant for you. I'm always learning. I think we think that everyone else has it figured out but us. And here's what I want to tell you, my friend. Nobody does. Everybody's human. We're all just figuring it out. So just last week I was traveling, and traveling's a lot. To all my sales folks that get on the road, I get it. It is a lot and it's a lot on your family. And so I was on like this third leg of my air quote world tour, minus the backup dancers. And I got a text from a friend and we're working on a project. And all it said was, hey, where are you on this? And I flipped out. Like I flipped out in my head. I was like, simmer down. I'm working on it. You're so needy, is what was happening in here in my head. And what I realized in that moment is I was so far off from my routines. When I am home, I put the phone down at a certain time. I put the
Mm.
do not disturb on so I can be present with my husband. I do these things and I got off of them, which is why I had that flip out moment. So the lesson learned in that air quote failure was the power in our habits. And I ask you, listener, who's dialing into this, is think back to when you were your most elevated, when you were your best, when you were excited, and what habits did you have in your life? Something so small as A girlfriend was telling me the other day that she used to spend 10 minutes in the morning just moving her body, whatever she could do, and then she would come back and read this little journal prompt that she had, or maybe she would read the Bible or whatever worked for her. And she said, I realized, Meg, as I got busier, I got off that. And I find that I'm flipping out at the littlest things. So my life lesson in that moment was to just look at these small little habits that you X off the list when you get busier, because it is so impactful on how you respond to that email, that text, that question.
And one last question for you here. Do you have a favorite quote, motto, or mantra that you try and remember?
So mine is, I don't know if you can see it. Maybe, am I wearing it today? Oh, I am. So I am one of those hokey people that does a word of the year. And this one has stuck with me, and it's called trust. I think when you trust that you will make the right decision with what you know at the time, because you always have, we're so quick to go to a Google survey, we're so quick to ask friends and family, you know what to do personally and professionally if you give yourself enough silence. So trust, man. I was reading something from Sarah Blakely the other day, and she talked about you don't need all of these degrees by your name. You don't need to graduate from Harvard. And this is coming from a billionaire that started a hosiery line with $5,000 to her name. She said, I had three things. I gave myself silence to listen to my gut. I trusted it, and I took action on it.
Love that. So good. And a good place to wrap up here. So I'll give you one last shot at it. Anything I forgot to mention, calls to action, how you can help us, how we can help you. Last thoughts here, Megan.
Mike, I just love this community that you're building. I think that there is so much power in community. How quick we forget that in the busiest of our lives. And there's this study that has been done since the 1930s, and time and time again. The happiest people in the world have this common denominator, and it's relationships. So my nugget to you, my friends, is when you are so busy saying you can't go to the networking event, or you can't go to the family event, or you can't do the thing because you're too busy, make the time to say yes, because connection is so powerful. And if you loved this conversation, this intentionality that my friend Mike and I are talking about, I would love to welcome you into my tribe. Come to megan-miller.com. We're here with open arms.
Sounds great. Megan, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and thank you for sticking with us until the end. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast in your favorite app. It's on all of them. Make sure that you reach out to a local Sandler trainer. If you need help with your sales management, growing your business, you're an entrepreneur, go to Sandler.com. A ton of free resources like this. There's also a local training center you can reach out to, or again, if you have multiple locations, reach out to our enterprise team. We help everybody from individuals all the way up to Fortune 500 companies. The How to Succeed podcast is brought to you by Sandler, the worldwide leader in sales, management, and customer service training. Find more information at Sandler.com. We'll see you next time.